It is a very surreal scene. Sunflowers and cornfields ring what must be the worst crash scene in recent history and the biggest crime scene on the planet today. And amongst the bodies and the debris, pro-Russian separatists and rebels guarding this mass grave, preventing international investigators from doing what they should be doing, which is to forensically pick through this crime scene to understand what exactly happened. I spent the day today in the cornfield and sunflower field in eastern Ukraine, not far from here, as I said earlier, to try and look for some basic answers into what happened, as the basic investigation into this crime hasn't even got underway. And I warn you, there are some upsetting scenes in my piece. The sunflowers of eastern Ukraine at the height of summer, usually a beguiling prospect, but since last Thursday hiding some terrible surprises and unimaginable horror. 3 local lads wanted us to see something, an alien object in this bucolic landscape, the first of so many. Blimey. Blimey. So this knot of twisted metal and wires was the cockpit of flight MH17. Look here, you can see the dashboard, or bits of the dashboard over there. The control panel. That looks to me like the joystick, or part of the joystick. This was one of the pilot's seats here. Here. This is where the pilot would have sat, or the co-pilot. God knows where he is now. And what's so extraordinary is that all this in the middle of a field of sunflowers, guarded by no one. There is no one here from any international agency, from the local authorities. Just a couple of villagers. Some of them have lain flowers. Some of them have come to look in disbelief of what happened here. But this was the cockpit of MH17. On the ground, the litter of catastrophe, random but always poignant. Bottles of duty-free booze, an open laptop, a first-class sleeper seat, the remnants of an economy-class video screen. But where you sat and how much you paid did of course not matter. And everywhere you look, evidence of the unbearable innocence of the victims. The wreckage is strewn over many miles, and we move on to the next village, through communities whose dogged normality is almost oblivious to the tragedy that unfolded here. The pro-Russian rebels. They've been widely accused of firing the missile that brought down the plane. Now they're guarding the mass grave that they may have helped to produce. Wherever there's a white flag, there is a body, and we counted dozens of flags. In some fields, they continue to look for the dead. Elsewhere, the recovery of the dead is well underway. A grim task carried out with methodical dignity, but carried out like few other recovery operations in the middle of what is still officially a war zone. These body bags rendered the victims anonymous, of course, but remember that these were Brits, Dutch, French, German, American, Malaysian, people from all over the world who were traveling at 33,000 feet in the skies above us, who would have been completely oblivious to what was going on the ground, who may have read about Ukraine in the newspapers or seen the occasional item of television news. But no one, least of all them, could have imagined that all that would end here like this. There are plenty of volunteers here, like these local coal miners, but none of the officials and forensic experts that you would usually see at a scene like this 2 days after an event. Many villagers are in shock. They cannot believe that their patch of earth has become a mass grave and a crime scene. But then their disbelief is dwarfed by the outrage of the international community. And I have to say that while we were at the crash site all day, and we could hear the crumps of artillery or indeed aircraft firing onto towns and villages nearby. So this is still not just a war zone by name, but an active war zone. And the ceasefire that was supposed to have been imposed a few days ago, suggested by both sides, clearly hasn't happened yet. And that definitely hampers any sort of investigation, as do the politics. Well, let's talk about the general situation down there. And I've got my guest here, Michael Bachurkin. He's from the OSCE. Now, you were at the crash site today with other international monitors. You weren't treated with the utmost respect and ease, were you?
Not really, although I must say the treatment was a bit better than yesterday when we were humiliated, maybe even threatened. But today we did spend more time there. We were allowed to access a larger area, but yet we weren't allowed really to go into the fields. We were only able to see one site of very many. But I think this is perhaps a confidence building process. Right. Tomorrow we're going to go back there and we'll demand more access.
But confidence building so many days after this tragedy actually happened, and by now the international community with forensic analysts and experts should be on the ground.
In a normal crash environment, that would be the case. And also in a normal crash environment, you'd have a sealed perimeter with lots of security. This is a very porous...
It was open, wasn't it?
It was open, and it's open at night, so it's very easy for people to get there. And then you may have noticed today, when we arrived, there was a bus full of armed individuals who came there, guarded the perimeter, and then left when we left.
Any sign of the black boxes? Did they tell you where they were? Were you allowed to see them?
We could pose questions about the black boxes if there was someone in charge. We asked to see a commander or a leader, and not one was produced. So that's a big problem, is to find credible answers.
Now, there's been a lot of pressure diplomatically from Washington, putatively from Moscow. Have you felt any of that pressure working in your favor on the ground?
Well, we're here on the ground. We've been here for 3 months. We know a lot of the interlocutors, including the leaders who hold sway over this part of Ukraine. So we deal with them a lot, for example, for access. But it's a patchwork situation here in the East, where you have many small groups who aren't necessarily connected.
Got to leave it there. Michael Bachurkin, thanks very much from the OSCE. He spent all day down at the crash site today and will be back there again tomorrow.